Hello, my name is David Custis, C-U-S-T-I-S, and this is my home. No, this is not a real estate commercial. My home's not for sale. But I do have something inside that's far more valuable than my entire estate, and that is one of the finest private record collections you'll find anywhere in the entire country. It's not only a very large collection, but it's one that contains just about every kind of music ever recorded in this country. It's a collection that goes all the way back to the turn of the century and contains just about anyone and everyone who has ever recorded any song at all. Allow me to invite you inside right now and we'll take a look. Welcome to my home. This is my corner and has been for the last more than 50 years, where I am constantly cataloging, cross-indexing this tremendous library I'm going to show you shortly. Here's where I do the hit parade files, the Billboard files, all discographies back here, reference books, Benny Goodman, Glenn Miller, Fats Waller. All the books you see on here and the records have to do with music. And this is all part of the collection that I'd like to talk to you about. But let's go upstairs now and look at the main library. This is the entrance to my main library. As you can see, Frank Sinatra is pretty well represented in the library, as well as with the pictures here on the wall. The picture in the center is Stan Kenton, a very fine orchestra leader, a wonderful gentleman that's no longer with us. I had the pleasure of interviewing Stan 3 different times. When he autographed this picture for me, it was being broadcast out of Gerhard's record shop on a Saturday afternoon. And it was the fastest 2 hours I ever spent. He's a wonderful gentleman. And his collection is well represented as well. But let's go inside now and take a look. Welcome to my main library. I call it the main library because there's records all over the house, CDs, transcriptions, and all that. But I'd like to tell you something of the reasons why I'm offering this, making this cassette. It's to let you know that this entire library, the reference books, the discographies, the autographs, and all that, are available. I'm now in my 70s, and I've been collecting for a long time. And I'm constantly cataloging. But I've never been married, so I have no family, no immediate family to leave this to. And I thought, since I am in my 70s, I'm still very active, I'm still collecting, I'm still cataloging. I'm up every night until well after midnight. It's usually 1 or 30 or 2 o'clock in the morning cataloging all this collection. It is rather extensive, and I'd like to explain it all to you in a little bit. I can remember, I always said that I have a fabulous memory for worthless information, and I can remember the very first recording I ever told my mother that it was my favorite record. It was a song that's still heard every year around Christmas time. It was Winter Wonderland. Now, there's quite a story behind that song. Today we say the person was institutionalized, but back in 1934 it was referred to as being an insane asylum. Even the story of how it first got recorded by Richard Himber's orchestra is rather interesting, but that is all contained in my file system. But it wasn't until I was a sophomore in high school that I remember the very first recording I ever bought. It was Woolworth's 5 and 10 in the Germantown section of Philadelphia. And that was Glenn Miller's Moonlight Becomes You, just before Christmas, 1942. And I've been at it ever since, as you can see. But now that as I say, I have no one to leave this to, I'd like to find someone who would appreciate this collection as much as I do. I would like the collection kept in its entirety, and that's why I'm offering the entire library. All the discographies, the reference cards, and everything is one complete package. I didn't want someone coming along wanting the Beatles, and somebody wants Presley, and someone Big's Band, and the classics. So I'd like to show you around the library now and explain how it's cataloged and the type of music and all that. So let's start looking at it. The shelves on this wall are nearly 18 feet long, 6 shelves high. And as you can see, they're packed solid with 12-inch long-playing records. These are filed alphabetically, all the way from ABBA right on through to part of Frank Sinatra. Every single recording of every single album has been extremely well cataloged and cross-indexed by titles, by artists, by the old radio and TV show known as Your Hit Parade, by the Billboard surveys, by recording dates and categories of music. Every single recording, as I say, has been cataloged, but every one is in excellent condition. There are no finger marks, no specks of dust, no scratches, blips, or anything of that sort on all of this on this wall. And it's the same throughout the whole library. Now, it's filed alphabetically, but when you come to, for instance, this is all Nat King Cole's 12-inch LPs. In here, then it's filed by the manufacturer's record number. So it's alphabetical, but so I can find anything immediately, I just go by the number. That is all Nat Cole. The same thing for Bing Crosby. All of this, more than 3 feet of records, is just Bing Crosby. It's the same throughout the library, so that I can go to any record. Now, on these shelves are 9 feet long, as you can see, 6 shelves high. This is all the big bands. It's the swing bands, the sweet bands. It's the Glenn Miller, all the way from Matty album, filed alphabetically through to Cy Zentner. This is all Glenn Miller right in here. It's Les Brown, it's Ray Anthony, it's Stan Kenton, Ted Heath, just about anybody and everybody's ever recorded. And the recordings, some go back to before World War I. The bottom shelf is all the pianists. It's Oscar Peterson and Fats Waller and Bernard Piefair, and just about anyone that's ever played piano. And the balance is guitar music, Cal Farlow and Barney Kessel and all that. And it's, as I say, every record is as good as brand new and extremely well cataloged. The top shelf here is all Christmas music. It's filed alphabetically, partway. The balance is where each cut is by a different artist, and that's filed by the manufacturer's record number. The balance of the other 5 shelves is where every single cut is by a different artist. So those too are filed by the manufacturer's record number. The bottom 2 shelves are the Reader's Digest album and Time Life and Longines albums. They are filed by the title of the album. But from the filing system, I know exactly which album it's in, I know which record it's on, which side, and which cut. And again, every single cut has been cataloged. In this section, it's the old 70 RPM records. At the time they were available, you could buy blank albums that hold 12 records to store them in. And that's what you'll find here on the top 5 shelves. But when they cut out the 78 RPM record, it was no longer available. So the outside walls of this whole library are the original 78s, kept in their original sleeves and thoroughly cataloged so I can find anything. The bottom shelf is a little bit different. You find a lot of comedy albums there, Bob Newhart and Alan Sherman and all that. And then there are speeches by Franklin Delano Roosevelt, Harry S. Truman, Richard Nixon, Winston Churchill, things of that nature. First section we looked at, I mentioned it was cataloged all the way, filed by Matty album, or rather from ABBA, right on through to part of Frank Sinatra. Well, I've continued over on this section. It's the continuation of Sinatra on through to probably Norman Zimmer was the very last. The balance of the shelves where you see ABC is where they haven't been completely cataloged, but they are filed so I can find anything, but it's ones that I still am working on. If we'll just continue panning over just a little bit this way, you'll see on this end is a variety of things. There's Dixieland, there's the Time Life rock and roll section at the top. There's country and western, bluegrass in that area. That's not complete of the Dixieland. I have other sections, but that's most of the Dixie and most of the westerns, country and western music. But we'll go around the next side and look at some other selections we have. Now on this section, it's a wide variety of things. The top shelf is all the small combos, the jazz groups, the Dave Brubeck, the Three Sons, the Barney Kessel, the Chico Hamilton, all that. And again, filed alphabetically by the groups. The same with this shelf in here. The next shelf is all the old original radio programs that was put out by 2 different outfits, Radiola and Sandy Hook. They've done an excellent job of recapturing the old original shows in their entirety, and they're as clean as if you were listening to them today. They want everything. And there's a wide variety of the programs, from Suspense, Lights Out, W.C. Fields, Jack Benny, Baby Snooks, the whole thing. This next shelf is all the Broadway shows, actually the next 2 shelves, Broadway shows and motion picture soundtracks. Down here we have the stirring marches of John Philip Sousa, Edwin Franco Goldman, all that. And I've had my own program on WQAL where I played these marches at noon on Saturday. It was well received. That's what's in this section. On this other section is all the old original 78s, and some of these records go back to the turn of the century. Well, quite a few before World War I. And they're cataloged with the record companies, Columbia's Together, RCA, Decca, Bluebird, and all that on this wall and one behind me. What you're looking at right now is a continuation of the 78s. This is the groups of the Capitol, the Bluebirds over here, Epic and Brunswick and things of that nature. Now, I grew up in an era when there were good composers. There was Cole Porter and Harry Warren and the Gershwin brothers. A lot of good music. And so I have disliked rock and roll rather thoroughly. But I do have anything that ever appeared in the Billboard's charts. And that is filed mostly in these 45s on this side. In the corner and back here and here are just the single 45s. And again, these are filed so I can find anything immediately, and it's all been cross-indexed. This is not all of it. We have more in another room, which I'd like to show to you. This is a continuation of the 45s we saw over in the main library. And these are the later part of the alphabet, the RCAs and Warner Brothers. On the files over there, you'll find the old original hit parade shows. I'm not the old original, but these are the shows that I produced back in the 1980s and into the 1990s. I should say at the outset that all this cataloging I've been doing for all these years, since 1942, is on 3x5 file cards. And I know today everybody says, why don't you computerize it? But you have to remember that I started this collection before the computer was invented. And there was no time that I ever thought, when do I switch over? So it's continued that way, but it's so extensively cataloged that it would be impossible to make the change. The files you're seeing right now are singles, the file for single titles, such as I've pulled out some here at random, like Here's That Rainy Day. And on this, it mentions who is the lyricist, who wrote the music, the publisher, and all that. And then all the recordings I have of any song is cataloged here. This, I say, is any song that did not get on your hit parade or on Billboard, then it's filed that way. Over on a little bit on this other side is the single records, the 78s and the 45s, filed all alphabetically. I will point this out. All of this is the single records all the way down. Where this is the artist file, where it's Bing Crosby or Crystal Gayle, whoever. If it didn't get on an LP, it's the single record, or it's in one of these other albums where each cut's different, then it's filed there, so that I can go to that file and find anything immediately. There is another file that's just on recording dates. We can pull out today's date and tell you 60 or 70 different recordings were actually made on this date, going back before World War I up to into the 1990s. But that's how this is cataloged up here. I'd like to show you more when we go downstairs about the hit parade and the Billboard, how that's been cataloged. Before we go downstairs, I thought you might like to see the studio. This is where I've recorded 196 of the hit parade shows that Andre Bruce, B. Wayne, and I put back in syndication. It started on KMPC Los Angeles back in January of 1981. And this is where I recorded all those shows. Well, now, back to my corner. As you can see from all these reference books and discographies and all that, they're used constantly in my cataloging of all this music. Everything is listed here. There's 45 records down here, up above the box album of 45s. I just thought I'd bring this one out. When I first got involved in the 45s, this is the first album I ever bought. It's Ralph Flanagan. He's even autographed it for me. The autographs goes with it too. It's in when I met him down at Steel Pier in Atlantic City. All of these files right here, these four drawers, are songs that got on your hit parade. Now, your hit parade was first broadcast on NBC on a Saturday night, April 20th of 1935, 9 o'clock, and originally for the first year and a half there were 15 songs in that hour show. Later on they cut it down to 10 songs. It stayed on the surveys, stayed on the charts. It was still broadcast until June 7th of 1958. There were over 1,500 songs that appeared on that show in all those years, and I have an original recording of every one of those songs that got it on the charts. They are here. And I know week by week what position any song was in from the first time it went on the survey until it went off. I've done the same for the Billboard show. The files here, these four doors, and all these files, any song that ever got on the Billboard charts going from June of 1934 up until into the 1990s. That's when I stopped collecting the Billboard charts. But there again is 95% of any song that ever appeared on Billboard. And this is where I'm doing all that catalog. And so now this is pretty much what I have. There's still more records in other rooms, but I think I've bored you enough with that. So the whole collection, the discographies, the autographs, everything, I'd like to find someone who would care for it and keep it intact with all the files, all the references in one position. So this is it. I'd like to hear from you. Thank you.